Чем быстрее растет глобальная экономика, чем глубже международное
The
сотрудничество,
faster the global growth, the stronger the effect of globalization, the harder it gets when it stops. Sometimes stop is the beginning of something new, more significant growth and progress, and structural renewal of the economy. Large infrastructure projects and new transport routes become the drivers of economic growth. Global regeneration allows us to reach new heights in high-tech industries, medicine and biotechnologies, composite materials and heavy-duty metals, and new approaches to research and development. Working with big data, artificial intelligence and robots allow us to solve tasks that were previously impossible, to make our planet cleaner. These projects are not possible without the formation of a creative person with a new system of values: reasonable consumption, careful attitude to nature, education, the development of new skills. The evolution of technology and consciousness unite us. We are together again. The economy of new reality. President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin. His Highness, Emir of the State of Qatar, Al Thani. His Excellency, Federal Chancellor of the Austrian Republic, Sebastian Kurz. Moderating the discussion is Stanislav Natanzon. Good afternoon, colleagues, ladies, gentlemen. I'm glad to welcome you to the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. This is the first global event of such a level that is being held in person or in a hybrid format, as it were. Anyway, it is a great pleasure to see all of you again in the flesh. I believe there are many topics for discussion that have accumulated over these months, and I think this discussion is going to be honest and very interesting. First, we will listen to the introductory remarks of our leaders, and then we will move on to the discussion. Mr. President, the floor is yours. Your Highness, Emir Tamim, Federal Chancellor Kurz, ladies, gentlemen, friends. I would like to welcome all the participants and guests of the 24th St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. Just a moment, I need to sort this out. You are well aware that almost from the very beginning of last year, due to the coronavirus pandemic, meetings in many traditional formats have been either cancelled or held online. And we're glad that after a long break we've all had to take, Russia is the one hosting the first big international business event. This forum gives the global business community a chance to talk to one another, not just with the help of modern telecommunication technologies, but also in the flesh, to have a live conversation, as it were. Of course, we've done our best to ensure the safety of our participants in compliance with the strictest sanitary rules. But I'd like to reiterate that the very fact that we're holding such a representative forum is a very positive sign, another testimony to the fact that partnerships, contacts of entrepreneurs, investors, and experts are gradually getting back to normal. Such positive trends is something we're also witnessing in the global economy, despite the magnitude of last year's downturn, which experts estimate to have been the biggest one since World War II, one can safely say that the world economy is getting back to normal. This year's global GDP growth is projected to be at its highest since the 1970s. Well, yes, experts say that it's going to be at around 6% or so. This is to a large extent due to the large-scale extraordinary decisions and measures adopted by the economic authorities across the world. And the practice has shown us that traditional monetary policy measures would have been insufficient to overcome the current crisis. A key role in a rapid economic recovery is being played by fiscal policy. And for the first time, the central banks of developing countries have supported very actively such fiscal policies. Of course, leading economies have more resources and tools to stimulate business activities. The figures are telling last year developed countries increased their budget deficits by around 10% of GDP on average, whereas developing countries only managed to increase those deficits by around 5%. And we know that thanks to these deficits, anti-crisis measures are being funded. And it's very good that there are such anti-crisis measures and they are being funded. This is a positive step, but there are negative sides to that too. We see that the economic recovery is uneven because different countries have different capabilities, and this can result in greater imbalances and greater gaps in the living standards both within countries and among them. And this, of course, brings about serious political, economic, and social risks for the development of this interconnected world and for our shared security. And I spoke about that back in January at the Davos Economic Forum. And the fight against the pandemic is a telling example. Until we have ensured a wide, universal access to vaccines across all continents, the threat of the pandemic, of new outbreaks, will be with us. And pockets of infections can persist, and they will pose a threat to all of our planet. What are we seeing now, however? The IMF estimates that high-income countries that account for 16% of the world's population now account for around 50% of all coronavirus vaccines that are manufactured currently. So that means that around 10% of the planet have fully vaccinated or have got the first jab, whereas hundreds of millions of people simply have no access to vaccine because these countries either have no technologies or production capacities or funds to procure the vaccine. And so far, those who could help them are providing little to no aid. As we say in Russia, first you always care about your own well-being, and this is what we see in this particular case of the fight against the pandemic. So either there is no significant assistance, and this assistance has to be there, or sometimes we see, and that is absolutely absurd, politically motivated restrictions on the acquisition of vaccines that have proven their reliability and efficiency amid current conditions. It looks as if it were the unwillingness to protect one's own citizens from this threat. Russia, as you know, makes its own contribution to the fight against the coronavirus. We've got 4 vaccines developed domestically, and the accomplishments of our scientists have achieved wide recognition across the world. Sputnik V has already been registered in 66 countries that are home to more than 3,200,000,000 people. I would like to highlight that we've not just used our unique technologies, we've not just created capabilities for manufacturing vaccines in Russia, we're also helping our countries to develop their own production capacities at home. And I would like to say that right now, every Russian citizen that has come of age has a chance to get a vaccine free of charge on a voluntary basis. in a very comfortable environment. And I would like to take this opportunity to address our citizens and to urge them once again, do take this opportunity and protect yourselves and your families and loved ones. Our vaccine is one of the most efficient ones. Its efficiency is more than 96%, and according to our authorities' data, there are no lethal cases, and I felt that for myself. Yes, maybe the temperature will grow a little bit, but that's it. I would like to request the government, the regions, and the businesses to work together on addressing the issues related to vaccinating people who come to Russia as labor migrants. We have many professionals like that, and construction, trade, services, and utilities. The Russian pharmaceutical industry is willing to continue to boost the production of vaccines. So we're not just fully covering our own needs, we can also provide foreign citizens with a chance to come to Russia and get vaccinated here. I know that given the efficiency of our vaccines, there is a high demand for that. Moreover, there is a widespread practice when people from different countries, business people, heads of big European companies, and other companies too, come specifically to Russia to get a jab against the coronavirus. In that regard, I would like to ask the government to analyze all aspects of this issue until the end of the month, so that, of course, in compliance with all safety measures and sanitary requirements, to organize the conditions for foreign citizens to get a chance to get a vaccine on a commercial basis. Colleagues, right now at this post-crisis recovery stage, it is very important not just to hit the stable trajectory of high-quality growth. We should also seize the opportunities that are opening up. We've got to seize our competitive advantages and tap into our scientific and technological potential. It is of great import to preserve and reinforce our business and investment ties among our countries. I believe that multilateral projects can become a significant factor that will ensure the economic recovery and its development, and we're grateful to our partners for this joint work, which we are still pursuing despite the pandemic, despite the difficulties the international affairs are going through. Incidentally, in that regard, I am glad to report that today, 2.5 hours ago, we've completed laying the pipes for the first string of Nord Stream 2, and works are advancing on the second string. And the gas line pipe, including the C segment, has already been completed. So there are 2 pipes very near from the German side, from the Russian side. They have to be welded, and then it's going to be complete. Also, this week, we've made ready the Russian part of the Russian line pipe until the Slavanske compressor stations. This is one of the most powerful, the biggest compressor stations, and gas is already flowing to Slavanske compressor station, so Gazprom is ready to pump gas into Nord Stream 2, and this route will serve as a direct link between the gas transportation systems of Russia and Germany, and just as Nord Stream 1 is going to contribute to Europe's energy security and reliable supply to European customers. I'd like to add that this project is highly efficient in economic terms, and it is in full compliance with the strictest environmental standards and technological requirements. And we're willing to further implement high-tech projects like that with our European partners and our partners elsewhere. We hope that this paradigm of mutual use, mutual benefit will always prevail over all kinds of artificial barriers of the current political climate. And right now, allow me to dwell a little bit on the priorities of our internal business agenda. Thanks to modern, swift measures, the Russian economy and the labor market are soon going to hit the pre-crisis levels. We've managed to preserve millions of jobs and avoid a sharp decline in the incomes of our citizens. Yes, there are problems there. Unemployment has crept up. The incomes have gone down. But nothing has happened that we could qualify as a catastrophe. So we've managed to avoid a catastrophe, which was possible amid those conditions we were going through. We've managed to avoid a sharp decline in the incomes. We see that our measures to support businesses, employees, and regions have worked, and we've helped on a targeted basis the Russian families and people who lost their jobs. I believe we're going to talk about that further. And of course, there are difficulties and there are challenges such as high unemployment rate amongst youth and also tensions in regional labor markets, but they have been brought about not just by the pandemic. We cannot use the pandemic as an excuse for everything. We know that these issues are of a systemic nature and they are related to outstanding structural issues our economy is facing. The government needs to reinforce programs to support employment in those regions where unemployment rates are still high. And I would like to highlight that these measures have to be targeted, and these solutions have to be tailored to the specifics of each concrete region. Moreover, on a nationwide basis, I instruct the government to launch as soon as possible a program to support youth employment and youth entrepreneurship in order to respond to the challenge of unemployment, to raise the income of our people. We need economic growth and we need new high-quality jobs in all sectors and regions of our country. The world history shows us that relaunching the economy after serious shocks always was due to boosting investment into infrastructure, territorial development, new technologies, and training of employees. I would like to thank the Russian regions who worked amid the difficult conditions of the pandemic that required concentrating their resources and attention. They did not take a break. They didn't try to use the circumstances as an excuse. They pursued improving business climate. They pursued dialogue with business and with new investors, and quite deservedly such regions have been given a high score on the National Investment Climate Score. Among the 10 best regions are Bashkortostan, Nizhny Novgorod region, and Anti-Mansiyski Autonomous District. We see good dynamics in Samara, Sakhalin, and Chelyabinsk regions. We are going to provide systemic support our regions to improve their business climate. I would like to request the plenipotentiary representatives of the President in federal districts to pursue active steps in that regard. I would also like to request the government to make a special emphasis on supporting those regions of Russia that still face difficulties with attracting investment. They need to implement best corporate governance practices and raise the level and quality of their work with investors. There are concrete tasks to be addressed by 2024 in all Russian regions. We have to create transparent, predictable, convenient regimes for businesses, for private investors, for launching new projects. What do I refer to? Each region will have to announce priorities for its development. This information has to be open to businesses, just as regional plans for city development and for infrastructure development, for roads, communications, and supply systems. And it is going to make it easier for businesses to choose sites for their new facilities, for new business. We will have to do away with redundant stages of getting excessive formalities and permits on most important procedures. I refer to getting access to electricity and water supplies, to getting a construction permit. At the federal level, we are consistently trying to remove all kinds of vestiges of the past. Starting from September the 1st this year, another 4,000 construction norms and regulations will no longer be obligatory. Given that decision, out of more than 10,000 obligatory norms in construction that used to exist, only 3,000 will remain. But of course, we see more room for simplification. I would like to point out that this is a large-scale, meticulous endeavor of cleaning up the regulatory field. It has taken 2 years, and we're going to continue on this path while retaining high standards in construction. I would like to draw the attention of heads of our regions, and also there's a commission buildings at the federal and regional levels, the heads of our state companies, private business. All the permits will have to be drafted with in compliance with new modern regulations. And of course, you'll have to take into account drastic changes and construction technologies and the use of new environmental construction materials. Each region will have to come up with an exhaustive, transparent algorithm of actions. It'll allow the investor to get very fast and without additional cost from a business idea to commissioning the facility. I would like to highlight how important it is for the government and regions to work together, and the economic bloc of our cabinet will work, and the quality of this work, this performance, is going to be assessed based on the dynamics of situations in those regions which are still facing difficulties related to business and investment climate. And you have to understand that the federal authorities have a stake here too, and they're responsible for that. No one should stand aside. And we should make sure that we have no failed regions that have been sidelined in terms of economic growth. Each and every region of Russia has investment and economic potential, and we've got to efficiently tap into that in the interests of our citizens and for the well-being of our families. There's going to be a new instrument for developing our regions, and that is the program of infrastructure loans. Our regions will have a chance to raise funds at a low rate for a long period of time. We've spoken about that. We've discussed that publicly too on many occasions. And the coming 2.5 years, the investment into infrastructure under this program has to rise to no less than 500 billion rubles. And I would like to ask the heads of our regions to pay maximum attention to preparing these projects for this instrument. Priority should be given to creating a comfortable environment for the lives of our people, to restoring our cities and towns. In a modern world, in this human-centered economy, all these things play a significant role as a factor of economic growth and investment attractiveness. Based on the best international standards and investment climate ratings, the Agency for Strategic Initiatives, together with our experts and commissions of the State Council, have come up with a national standard of living rating. And this is a very good new performance indicator. I would like to share the first results. As we expected, the leaders are Moscow, Tyumen region, Tatarstan, Khanty-Mansiysk Autonomous region, and St. Petersburg. These have been traditional centers of our business activities. Serious resources have long been invested here into the development of infrastructure. And it's important that an increasing number of our regions are trying to live up to these high standards. And in several aspects, in several respects, they are showing very good dynamics. In terms of education, Mordovia is one of the best. Udmurtia is one of the best in terms of doing your own business, and Novgorod region is one of the best in terms of social safety of its citizens. There is another good comprehensive indicator of the rating, that is the devotion of people to their region, their willingness to stay there, to live there, to want their children to live there, and among the leaders are Sevastopol and Kaliningrad region. I would like to say that this rating gives us a chance to impartially assess the situation, to see whom you can emulate, whom you can borrow the best practices from. But it is also a very good instrument for management teams. This provides feedback to ensure more efficient work and to concentrate your efforts on the most sensitive issues, among which is raising the affordability and accessibility of housing. I know that here at the forum and also across the country, there is an ongoing discussion on what is going to happen to the concessionary mortgage scheme at the rate of 6.5%, which turned out to be one of the key anti-crisis measures to support our citizens and our economy. As of now, more than 50,000 families have got such a mortgage loan. 2 trillion rubles has been raised to channel into housing. As you know, the program expires on July the 1st, 2021, so very soon. But I would like to reiterate that this program was an anti-crisis measure, so it was temporary. At the same time, to stop it abruptly, to wrap it up, all of a sudden, is something we cannot do. We have to take into account the important role this concessionary mortgage scheme is playing amid the current conditions to address the housing needs of our citizens and also to the construction industry, which brings together different sectors of our economy. So I suggest this program should be extended for all Russian regions for another year until July the 1st, 2022. But we will raise a little the mortgage rate. There's going to be some adjustments. The rate is going to be 7%, whereas the ceiling will have to be uniform for all regions, and it is going to be to the tune of 3 million rubles. Another decision has been made in order to make mortgage more affordable for families with children, and it consists in the following. I'd like to remind you that we've got some systemic measures in place, namely a special program, mortgage scheme for families who, after January the 1st, 2018, had a second child or more children. And I suggest we should widen the scope and apply it to all families with children who were born after January the 1st, 2018, in the family, even if the families have only one child so far. And even if a family have a firstborn, they will be able to get a mortgage at 6% and then get an apartment or housing that is newly built or refinance a previous mortgage. The maximum for Moscow and St. Petersburg and for Moscow and Leningrad region, where real estate rates are higher, will of course be higher at 12 million rubles, and it's going to be 6 million for other regions of Russia. Colleagues, we understand that raising the quality of life, developing our infrastructure across Russian regions is going to be a driving force behind new projects, and also driving force behind private investment is going to create new opportunities for large companies, but also for small and medium enterprises, which serve as the backbone of our economy, that build a modern, competitive business environment, because competition is the main driving force behind development. And what's more important, it is a market factor for reining in the growth of prices. Last year, we took a systemic decision to support SMEs. We halved from 30 to 15% the social contributions for small enterprises, and we're not going to abandon this scheme. Moreover, we're willing to take additional steps to support our entrepreneurs. Allow me to share with you some of these measures today. First, this year already, I suggest we should launch a new mechanism for providing loans to SMEs. It's going to be an umbrella guarantee scheme. What I mean is the following. Our development institution, namely the SME Corporation, is going to provide guarantees for loans to partner banks. It is going to assume part of the risks of SMEs. It is going to make loans for them more affordable. There are estimates that entrepreneurs will be able to raise no less than 600 billion rubles until 2024 under this scheme. Secondly, we know that SMEs often lament that the banking fees are very high when trade and other operations are carried out. We've already broadened the scope of our fast payment system that allows making settlements with a reduced banking fee, and you can also have cashless transactions among individuals and entrepreneurs using this system. But so far, this mechanism is underused. I would like to remind you that until October the 1st, all SIBs have to join the fast payment system. And I believe it would be the right thing if the biggest ones do that as soon as possible, namely by July the 1st. Moreover, I suggest that until the end of the year, I believe it's going to be good news to SMEs. I suggest that they should get reimbursement, full reimbursement, for the fees they have paid for using the fast payment system. And if even in those cases when they sell their services or goods to individuals, to to other citizens. And that will allow to bring down the cost of using this system for SMEs to zero. We've talked about that with the central bank and with other colleagues, but not to disincentivize the financial institutions. Of course, they will need to get some support from the budget. Third, right now there are companies that work under a simplified taxation regime, and they have to get back to the general taxation regime if they reach a certain threshold in terms of their staff or their profits, and it creates additional fiscal burden for these businesses, and it contains their growth. It makes them resort to some tricks like artificially splitting their companies, especially telling us the example of catering. And for the companies working in this field, I suggest we should launch a pilot project starting from next year. This will allow us to test a mechanism of a smoother transition from one taxation regime to the other. Let me share with you the details. The companies joining this project will be exempt from paying VAT tax if their profits are not superior to 2 billion rubles per annum, and they will still be entitled to a reduced social contribution rate of 15%, even if the staff of the company rises to 1,500, whereas right now the threshold stands at 250. Colleagues will see what kind of effect it'll yield for helping bring businesses out of the shadow, and also the effect of stimulating the companies. All the invoices are going to be conducted through the cash registry, and also the salaries are going to be paid not in the shadow, absolutely legitimately. Thank you. I think we speak the same language, and the government is going to do everything in its power to fulfill its commitments. And I would like to add that we have agreed to exempt of tax declarations those entrepreneurs that use a simplified taxation regime and also use cash registries. I would like to draw the attention of our colleagues from the government and the parliament. This draft law was adopted in the first reading last year, but so far it's been stalling, and I would like to see this to the end as soon as possible. We also have to free our SMEs of excessive anti-monopoly control. And the thing is, the thresholds have not been revised for a very long time, and they're not up to date, whereas the anti-monopoly control and oversight covers all companies with profits of more than 400 million rubles per annum, and I would like to suggest that this ceiling be raised to 800 million, and this will help growing companies be rid of cumbersome, excessive reporting and additional documents, and a higher threshold has to be set for mergers and acquisitions. So if a contract is worth more than 800 million, less than 800 million, then it is not going to have to get a permit from the anti-monopoly authorities. And of course, there are measures to stimulate demand in all sectors. And I also suggest to raise the share of goods and services that our big companies, government authorities, municipal authorities, that they have to procure from small and medium enterprises, and including non-commercial organizations, and this share has to be no less than 25%. And I would like to say that this refers to companies under Federal Law 223, and also those companies that cooperate with the municipal authorities under Federal Law 44. There are many nuances which I fully understand, and I understand there are certain services and goods that Russian companies simply do not produce, but I believe this threshold has to be at the level that I've just mentioned. But the nuances, we can work them out. We also have to decrease the maximum time for payment for the services or goods rendered from 30 to 15 business days, which is a very important measure, and for small enterprises and for socially oriented non-commercial organizations, this has to go down from 15 to 7 days. And of course, preferences have to be given to real companies, not to sham or affiliated companies. And I would like to ask the oversight authorities to keep that in mind. And I would like to instruct the government to pay special attention to making sure that procurement for government purposes should be carried out preferentially from Russian producers, but of course in compliance with the competition norms. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said previously, to overcome social and economic consequences of the pandemic, we've got to develop international cooperation. We have to band our efforts together in the face of systemic long-term challenges that are independent of the current market situation, of geopolitical differences, the challenges that set the future of our civilization. First and foremost, I refer to the climate agenda. The scientists have estimated that thanks to human anthropogenic economic activities, more than 2 trillion tons of greenhouse gases have accumulated in the Earth's atmosphere, and their volume rises by another 50 million every year, which warms up the planet gradually. I often hear that Russia is allegedly not interested in addressing global environmental issues, but let me tell you right away that this is just nonsense. It's a myth. And sometimes it's even a deliberate, blatant twisting of facts. Just as many other countries, we feel the risks and challenges in that field. I refer to desertification, soil erosion, the thawing of permafrost. Just as many who are present here, we are working in the Arctic. We have whole cities built on permafrost, and should it thaw, imagine the consequences for Russia. We are concerned about that. And we consistently support the implementation of the UNFCCC, the Kyoto Protocol, the Paris Agreement. I would like to highlight that there is no Russian climate or European climate or American climate or Asian climate. All countries on the planet have a shared responsibility for the modern world and for the lives of future generations. We've got to set aside our political and other differences. We should not turn carbon neutrality into a tool for bad faith competition when, under the pretext of this carbon footprint, there are attempts to revisit and revise investment in trade flows, when attempts are made to limit the access to green technologies for whole countries and producers. We know that our country is contributing to addressing this task due to our scale, our size, the role Russia plays in the world. Our environmental and climate projects will play a leading role for dozens of years in preserving our climate, and we have a goal in the next 3 decades. Our net greenhouse gas emissions should be lower than in Europe. This is an ambitious task, but it's achievable. And until October the 1st, I instruct the government to come up with a detailed plan, and we'll talk about that at a special session. What are the avenues we're going to pursue? First, we're trying to decrease the greenhouse gas emissions across different economies. We're working on our energy, introducing low-carbon sources. We have the biggest gas reserves. Of course, gas is a fossil fuel, but it's the cleanest one, and we cannot do without that affecting the transition. And also, we have nuclear, hydropower plant, renewable energies, and nuclear sector. Of course, we are building infrastructure for hydrogen production, which is going to be used as fuel in metal, in cement production, and transportation. We are also going to decrease the emissions when hydrocarbons are produced, and we're going to use to the maximum associated petroleum gas. Incidentally, among out of all oil-producing countries, we are most efficient in using the APG. We're also going to overhaul our heat energy sector, and we'll also electrify the gas transportation infrastructure. We also want to improve our energy efficiency in housing and heat supply, and also we would like to make sure our public transportation transition to electricity, hybrid engines. And of course, we need to overhaul our economy and infrastructure, and that requires additional market instruments. That is why we start to issue government-subsidized green bonds. We have also come up with the so-called green taxonomy to assess the performance in that regard. But of course, it is not sufficient simply to reduce emissions in order to address this task of climate preservation. Because for carbon neutrality, we need to take into account the absorption of greenhouse gases. We need to decrease the volume of such gases that has already accumulated in the atmosphere, and we need to learn better to capture and store and use efficiently these gases. And this is the second avenue we pursue. We see a new industry, new market emerging right now. It is going to be a market for the so-called carbon units. Many know what carbon units are, but let me explain that for those who are not in the energy field. It is kind of an asset that represents the volume of absorption by a plot of land or forest of these harmful emissions into the atmosphere. So if you have done something to increase the absorptive capacity of your plant of land, then you create a certain number of carbon units, and many countries, many legal entities are planning to take these carbon units from exporters, compensating for the emissions. And Russia has a colossal potential represented by forests, tundra, agricultural lands, and swamps. Our country accounts for 1/5 of the world. Forests, that is more than 10 million square kilometers. The scientists estimate that they right now absorb around several billions of tons of CO2 equivalent on an annual basis. So the potential of Russia is tremendous. And thanks to its natural competitive advantages, Russia can take a unique place in the global market for carbon units. To that end, we need to raise the efficiency of using our forests and lands, increase their absorption capacity. We need to improve the reforestation. We need to fight forest fires. We also have to broaden and expand our pristine nature, create new natural reserves, which we are doing. We have to introduce land rehabilitation, agricultural technologies, and we can achieve a triple effect in that regard. First, we invest money into technology. We achieve land rehabilitation, which in turn will raise the environmental well-being of our citizens, of our cities and territories. We will also create new jobs in a new high-tech industry of utilizing the greenhouse gases. And another thing, we're also going to create a competitive edge for our exporters in the foreign markets. And I address those who sit in this very room. This is a direct appeal to Russian companies that are already buying or contemplating buying carbon units from abroad, planning to do that in future. Instead of doing that, it's better invest into climate projects in our country, because the yield is going to be greater, the economic benefit is going to be greater, and this will also be future-oriented, and the efficiency is also going to be higher. In that regard, I would like to point out that experts estimate that the profits of this new climate sector and the Russian market in the near future can rise up to the tune of more than $50 billion per annum. In other words, that is a very good avenue for investment, both for Russian and foreign companies, and we invite everyone who is interested in that to work with that on that, and we're going to create a favorable environment for you. Let me mention some issues that are of critical importance for climate projects in Russia. First, we need to work in detail on the criteria for these projects. We've got to designate the territories and the plots of land on which these technologies can be applied. We also have to create a transparent, unbiased system for assessing the performance of climate projects. This is a very important part of what I'm talking about. We have to assess the current absorption capacity of these plots of land and the resulting one once the projects have been implemented, and then we'll calculate the difference which is going to be represented by the carbon units I've just mentioned. We also have to set in place a system for monitoring the emissions and for the absorption of greenhouse gases based on satellite imaging, on digital technologies, with the help of AI. Such a national system that will use the potential of our science is something Russia is already building. We are creating a whole network of so-called carbon testing grounds, which pioneers the monitoring of emission absorption of CO2 in real time. And we are assessing the quality of natural systems, of water resources and other parameters. We're also creating a pilot carbon market in the Sakhalin region. This experiment is going to be a step towards carbon neutrality and also towards creating a national carbon units market. I know that similar systems are soon going to be launched in other countries, and that means that there is another important challenge in place. We need to have a system for mutual recognition of this system for calculating emissions and absorptions. We need a transparent climate statistics system. There needs to be mutual understanding between our governments and between our scientific communities. We need research, and I would like to instruct the government to create the legal framework for that by July 2022. This has to be done at the level of laws, at the level of our agencies and government bodies, so that business, both foreign and Russian, could understand what the criteria, what the rules are in this market, for them to be able to make plans. Colleagues, in conclusion, I would like to say once again that despite all the tribulations brought about by the global pandemic, the world is getting back to normal, and a very good example to that end is our meeting in St. Petersburg. And next week already, St. Petersburg is going to host the UEFA European Championship. And I would like to wish all the best to our great friend of ours, Your Highness, the Emir of Qatar. Yesterday he had his birthday. Your Highness, my congratulations. I'm confident that the Qatar is going to host this World Cup next year with great success, the FIFA Cup. And these events bring people together, and business people who are very numerous in this room understand that direct communication is what moves these initiatives forward, and that means that the whole world economy is moving forward, and Russia is willing to do that, to create conditions for exchange of experience. I would like to thank you for your attention, and I would also like to wish all the best to the forum and to its participants. Thank you.
President Putin, that was big news, of course, first and foremost of the Nord Stream 2, and I'm confident we will discuss it later in our discussions, but a very little clarification on your presentation. You mentioned the small and medium enterprises to be the foundation of the Russian economy. However, we all know what is the share of the state sector in the Russian economy, and the Russian Accounting Chamber, and Mr. Kudrin is in the room here, who's here to confirm that the share of the state economies and state share in the economy will only increase. You've mentioned the measures to be taken to support the economy. A lot of money is planned to be spent on that. So tell us, this money will be spent to the state sector, presumably, and then private investors in the room can lay back and relax, or you'd rather focus on private investors? What are you making your bet on, private or public? Well, first of all, we are making a bet on a common sense and the specific conditions where the world is today, and the Russian economy in particular. In the times of crisis, it is always the case that everywhere, all around the world, the share of state in the economy is growing. And as soon as the situation stabilizes, we will see an increase of private business, both in terms of numbers of companies and the volume of the operations and the turnover. So there is no news on that. We have big companies, big state enterprises, like Gazprom, Rosneft. However, that is only state participation. Those are not state-owned enterprises in the direct meaning of this word, although we understand very well and we're constantly and fully aware of the fact that we need to move forwards toward further privatization, and that is what we're doing. Please note, I specifically mentioned a number of companies, namely Rosneft. We see the CEO of Sberbank sitting in front of us in the front row, and almost half of the shareholders of Sberbank are foreign nationals, around 47 or 48%. So I would say in this regard, Russia is not that much different from any other countries. And when I was speaking, what I was trying to say is that the measures that we're going to take to support SMEs, also with the support of the big state companies and state enterprises, because we're going to set them an objective to take procurements from the SMEs, because the SMEs are certainly not state-owned enterprises. And that would relate to around 25% of all the procurements that they're going to do. And that is exactly the direct support that we're going to render to SMEs and private sector. If we talk about the processes of privatization, they're also ongoing. It is just that we're trying to do it in a very careful manner based on the market situation. What are you likely to sell? At what price are you likely to sell it? And whether you really want to sell it, taking into account the current conditions. But dramatically, our big objective is to make sure that we need to develop market-based relationship in the country and support private business by attracting private investors. Thank you very much. Dear ladies and gentlemen, please welcome His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, Emir of the State of Qatar. Congratulations on your birthday, Your Highness, once again, that you had yesterday. The floor is yours. Thank you very much. Your Excellency, President Vladimir Putin, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I'd like to say that it is my pleasure to extend my thanks to His Excellency President Vladimir Putin for his kind invitation to us to participate at St. Petersburg International Economic Forum that is taking place in this wonderful city that is truly historic, producing culture, literature and art, demonstrating courage in resistance during the siege of Leningrad. And thank you very much for inviting Qatar to be the guest country of the forum. This forum is being held against the backdrop of great and unprecedented challenges at the local, regional and international levels, especially amid the ongoing pandemic of COVID-19. And we get to feel all the serious and negative repercussions of it to the global economy. That, of course, brings even more value to this forum. It has truly become an important international event in the field of economics and businesses. This forum is also setting an example to the rest of the international community in terms of coming up with international initiatives that can contribute to sound environment for the regional and global economy and investment, and to finding effective solutions to common economic challenges. Obviously, broad international participation in the St. Petersburg Economic Forum undoubtedly reflects the prestigious position assumed by Russia in the region and in the world. Honorable audience, the State of Qatar takes pride in the strong historic relationship with the Russian Federation. These relations have witnessed a concrete development over the last 2 decades in various political and economic fields, especially in the trade and investment domains, where the state of Qatar is playing a leading position among foreign investors to Russia. In this context, we confirm our value of active and consistent cooperation in the area of economics, especially in the energy field. And once again, we confirm our confidence in the robustness of the Russian economy and importance of investing in it. The volume of Qatar's investment in Russia has doubled in the recent years, and we look forward to increasing it in the upcoming years. The economic cooperation between Qatar and Russia is not limited to direct investments. It goes beyond that to cover international coordination to create necessary international regulatory framework to promote this cooperation. And I point out here that the two countries have established, together with our friendly countries, the Doha-based Gas Exporting Countries Forum. Honourable audience, the state of Qatar is going through a significant stage in its overall development by means of implementing its national strategies, numerous programs and projects in accordance with the Qatar National Vision 2030. The main driving force of Qatar's economy at this stage is investment in infrastructure and development projects, especially in education, healthcare, transportation, research, small and medium enterprises. We seek to achieve progress in economic diversification, and we focus on increasing private sector investments in all sectors of economy by providing incentives, offering partnership projects between the public and the private sector, and attracting direct foreign investment. The development projects in the state of Qatar provide great opportunities for foreign companies to increase their participation in the Qatar's economy in various sectors. Over the recent years, we have developed and introduced pivotal amendments to many legislations that enhance private sector's participation and attract foreign investments. That contributes to creating an attractive and favorable environment for investment. The state of Qatar is working to increase investment in green and sustainable energy and other areas that will contribute to preserving the environment and combating climate change. Honourable audience, dear guests of the forum, the COVID-19 pandemic has revealed the extent to which the lives of peoples and their destinies in our modern world are intertwined and correlated. It has proven that no country can alone confront the catastrophe and the magnitude of this pandemic, and investing in research to fight and prevent the virus and similar outbreaks in the future must be an international effort, and the international community must work hard and diligently to make vaccines and treatment accessible to all, especially to the poor peoples or those who face upheavals and wars. For it is not acceptable to subjugate people's health to the laws of the market and global trade. On this occasion, I commend Russia's role in producing and distributing vaccines. On the other hand, strengthening the economy, investment and innovations, work and production, together with promoting common human values, is a great way to build necessary potential to fight the pandemics and overcome other global challenges such as climate change. It is also the only path for people to restore their normal lives that they have been deprived of as a result of the pandemic. It will also support our health institutions, scientific research, and make vaccination possible for inhabitants of this planet. In this connection, we call on the private sector in Russia and the world to explore the promising Qatari business environment in many projects and in various fields. In conclusion, I reiterate my thanks to His Excellency President Vladimir Putin for his kind invitation to us to participate in this forum and for choosing the state of Qatar as the guest country at the forum, hoping that it will achieve its desired goals and wishing our two countries more fruitful cooperation. May God's peace, mercy and blessings be upon you.
Господин канцлер, ждем также вашу...
Mr. Federal Chancellor, now the floor is yours. Please share with us your outlook on the world economy, and we'll have discussion afterwards.
Sehr geehrter Herr Präsident Putin, Eure Exzellenz Sheikh.
Distinguished President Putin, Your Highness Sheikh Al Thani, dear ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to represent Austria here at this forum in St. Petersburg. As it has been mentioned by the previous speakers, over the last year and a half, our world has changed dramatically because of the pandemic and the crisis that it has provoked. It has badly damaged our economies, and therefore it is a very good sign that this dialogue in St. Petersburg is taking place today. It is extremely important that we share a positive outlook into the future. We know that hundreds of millions of people on the planet have been infected. There were a lot of deaths, and that was a time of massive restrictions of social lives. And that means that over the last decade, we had to get over the largest crisis. We all know that the economic growth globally has slowed down. A lot of job places have been lost. But luckily, now we see the first signs that the economy is gradually getting recovered. And that is also confirmed by the projections we've been preparing. Many parts of the industry have started working again. We see that tourism is gradually picking up. And our objective is to make sure that we achieve the levels of the pre-crisis situation next year. But we can only succeed if every country will successfully overcome the pandemic. And that is exactly why the international cooperation is increasingly important today, more than ever. And we know that it is not always going smoothly, because different parts of the world are politically divided. And you know, it's not just because of the differences of our political systems, but due to many other differences. You also know that it applies to the democratic rights and freedoms. And if we are to demonstrate respect towards one another, we have to learn to talk about those differences and discrepancies. And despite all those differences, we need to work together in different areas. We need to search for ways to cooperate and use them. And today I'd like to touch upon 3 areas that I believe to be particularly important. First and foremost, that is joining forces to overcome the crisis. That is also joint use of the potential of the economic growth. And thirdly, joint fight against climate change. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear President Putin, you already touched on this issue. Certainly, we need to overcome the pandemic together. And this crisis has demonstrated that we, as nations, as countries, are going to be more resilient and will be better prepared if we fight against coronavirus together. A year ago, we were all very hopeful that the vaccine will sooner or later be developed and it will help us overcome the crisis, and that by summer we'll be able to get back to normal lives. And thanks to that, our hopes are reality now. And that is a proof to the fact of the great power of science and research. And it would not be possible to achieve this goal, wouldn't that be for the shared project in science and in politics. And it doesn't have to matter where this or that vaccine is coming from Russia, from the US, from China. Every success in fight against coronavirus is a shared success of the whole world for the good of all the people. And therefore, geopolitics must not stand in the way of those developments. Our fight against coronavirus can only be won when the vaccine is made available all around the world. And we have to put it at the center of our cooperation. We very much support the UN initiative to make sure that all the people, no matter where they live, get vaccinated as soon as possible. And I'm very happy that Sputnik V has been present and registered by more than 65 countries in the world, is being supplied there, which means that this vaccine will be made available to all of us very soon. And I'd like to thank you, President Putin, for your initiatives and your effort in this regard, because indeed all countries of the world will be able to overcome the pandemic together. We need to get united in fighting coronavirus in order to care for the well-being of people. Coronavirus is not just a threat to our health, to our well-being in general. You know that over the last decade, our economies have been increasingly integrated. And that is why our shared well-being is dependent on that. And Austria is a great example to that. We're a small country, but our economy is very well integrated with other countries all around the world. We export a lot, and Russia is an important trade partner to us. 5 billion euro is the amount of our trade with Russia, and of course we look forward to expanding this cooperation to make sure we bring it up to the pre-crisis levels. It is in our shared interest to make sure that the export-oriented economy is brought back to normal. And you know that it suffered greatly from the pandemic, but apart from the coronavirus, there are many other threats to the global economy and to the well-being of our people. That is the policy of protectionism. As you know, in 1995, we laid a solid foundation with the UN to develop global trade and combat protectionism. That is the effort being constantly paid by the World Trade Organization. However, we see that those policies are being increasingly questioned. That is also connected with geopolitics, when the two are being mixed, geopolitics and global trade. I think that is a very dangerous mixture. We have to stick to the model of free trade. And we believe it is vital that all nations are treated fairly and in a transparent manner. And those requirements have to be equal, the standards have to be the same, and of course we all need to share equal rights. And we must not deviate by the principles set by the World Trade Organization. We need to work together according to the framework of the WTO, and we need to keep this model for the future, in parallel to working against the pandemic together and recovering our economy. And the third issue that I'd like to touch on is combating climate change. This is something that could be the central goal of our work. And I believe that we will only succeed once all countries unite their efforts. And I believe all the countries were really trying to commit to the Paris Climate Agreement. And it won't be enough if just politicians or scientists would stick to that. We need to do much more. We need to engage the economic development in this process to make sure that economic innovations are also contributing to climate protection and the CO2 emissions reduction. We need to use all the tools available to turn it into shared standards for the whole world. In Europe, and that was mentioned by the EU Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen, who touched on those goals that very much reflect this approach. You know that 55% is our target by 2030, 55% reduction in carbon emissions, and we work very hard to achieve this target. And you know that we have made some very important steps. We've invested billions of euro in this program to make sure we address this issue. And I'm absolutely convinced that in fighting global climate change, we can only succeed together. We can really build a green future for Europe, and European companies and manufacturers can and should contribute to that. The government of Austria has set itself very ambitious objectives. By 2024, we want to become a CO2 neutral economy. And we are developing new ways of development in the energy field. and we want to use renewable energy sources more actively. And this is where we're making a big bet on hydrocarbon and hydrogen. So hydrogen is certainly the fuel of the future, and we are going to continue our research in hydrogen because green hydrogen is a very promising fuel source. And our post-COVID plan means that around 10% of our GDP would be accounted and spent on this green agenda. That would apply to many different areas that relates to green construction sector. Dear ladies and gentlemen, Austria is a very small country. However, we are a part of a general framework. Together, we fight against the pandemic, against climate change. And of course, we are all aiming for the shared and common good, for better quality of life for everyone. And no matter how tough this crisis is, we are moving forward. And we will keep working together in many areas of our lives for the sake of our cooperation. Thank you very much.